Yes. In the last session, we discussed about chart of accounts. If you want to create the description as a part of any transaction, we need to create chart of accounts. We have to create the chart of accounts. COL. To create the chart of accounts, we use accounting key flex field. Accounting key flex field is one of the concept, or you can call as one of the feature which is available within the GL application. Within the general ledger application, we have a accounting key flex field. Within the accounting key flex field, we can create the chart of accounts by performing these tasks. First, we create chart of account structure name, segments, value sets, and values. This is what we discussed. So let's focus on the same to understand few more points. So when you create the chart of accounts in the system, what is the capacity of the segments we can create within the chart of accounts? As a part of chart of accounts, max you can create 30 segments. Within the chart of accounts, you can create max 30 segments. The minimum are 2 segments. If you want to create chart of accounts, minimum 2 segments are required. Max 30, minimum 2. Max 30 means it could be anything. And when you talk about minimum 2, what are those 2 we have to create? We have to understand. What 2 segments we have to create? We have to understand. Those 2 segments are mostly company and account. So these are the minimum segments which we have to create within the chart of accounts. Yes, we can create max 30 segments, but minimum 2 are mandatory when you create the chart of accounts. Reality, how many segments we create? Reality, how many segments we create as a part of implementation? As a part of implementation, we create segments like 6 segments or 7 or 8, 9. Mostly these are the size of or count of segments we implement in the real-time projects. In some projects, 6 segments, in some projects, 7, 8, 9. In some clients, it may be 10 also. We don't go more than 10 segments. Really not required. Why it is not required, we'll understand very soon. Max, we can create 30 segments, minimum 2 segments. In real implementations, around 6 to 10 segments we create in the chart of accounts. So typically, what are the segments we create when we do the implementation? When you do the implementation, what are the key segments? And most of the implementation, what are the key segments we use? And the rest, what client can choose based on their business requirement. In most of the implementations, you see the segments like company segment and account segment. Since these 2 are mandatory, we use in every implementation. Along with that, we use department segment also. We use department segment. And when company deal with the various activities with the suppliers and customers, yes, that we can record. If we are purchasing from the supplier, we record the transaction with the supplier name. You are selling something to customer, yes, we record the transaction with the customer name. Sometimes within the organization, there could be transactions between the entities. Say you are into 5 type of businesses. 5 type of businesses you may call as 5 entities if you are operating according. If you have 5 entities, 5 businesses within your organization, there could be chances where one entity or one company takes service from another company, not from the supplier, from another company. One company may sell some goods to another company. Within the organization we are talking, not with the supplier and customer. We are not talking about buying from the supplier and selling to the customer. So now we are taking the case as if there is any situation where company one is selling something to company two, or else if company one is providing the services to company two, those we have to record in the system. Accordingly, we have to produce the reports to understand what transactions are recorded within the organization. To track those transactions, to track such kind of internal transactions, we can use the segment called as intercompany. We can use the segment called as intercompany segment. So already we discussed mandatory segments are company and account. Along with the company and account, we use department as another key segment. When we record the transaction with the so-and-so company, within the company, there could be multiple departments. The transactions belongs to which department, if you want to capture, we have to set up the segment called as department. So intercompany, as we discussed, within the organization, if you are performing the transactions across the entities, or else called as a companies. If you are recording the transaction across the companies, to track that information more detailed level, we have to use intercompany segment. So along with this, in the most of the projects, we recommend the clients to use future segments. Why we have to recommend to use the future segment? Say you are doing the implementation for one client and you finalized 7 segments. After 2 years, client is going to raise the requirement as they need one more segment. If they need one more segment after implementation, it is not possible. If you add one more segment in the chart of accounts, it will create data inconsistency issues. There will be many challenges with the existing data. That is the reason Oracle is recommending that don't add any new segments in your chart of accounts. Once you create the chart of accounts, that means you are finalizing the chart of accounts. No amendments are allowed to do the chart of accounts. System will allow you to add one more segment. Say you created 7 segments. After 1 year, you want to add one more segment into chart of accounts. System will allow, but it will create many issues. That is the reason that is not at all recommended. You may think, why system is going to allow us? We created 7 segments, and if you want to create one more segment in the chart of account, why system is going to allow? The reason is, sometimes you may create the chart of accounts before recording the transactions. If you want to add additional segments, you can add it. To keep that flexibility, Oracle is allowing you the option anytime you can add, but we should know when to add, when we should not add. When we can add, we created chart of accounts, but no transactions are recorded. Yes, you can go and add one more segment. There won't be any issue with the existing data because you didn't record the transactions. Since no transactions recorded by using the chart of accounts, you can go and add segment at any point of time to the chart of accounts. Once you start using the chart of accounts to capture the description of the transaction, we should not add any segments. This is very, very important point which we should have. So that is the reason we always create buffer segments, additional segments like future segments. Most of the implementation we recommend 2 buffer segments. Few clients will accept with the 2 future segments. Few clients says we don't need, but anyway, we are okay to have 1 segment as a future segment. It could be 1 or 2 depending on the client business. if the client is very big client and they are into different businesses, definitely there could be need in the future. That is the reason we may recommend two segments. If client is mid-size or small size clients, you may recommend one. But ideally, by default, we recommend two segments. They can finalize, they can choose whether they need one or two. Along with this, depending on the nature of business they are into, they can finalize the other segments. So by default, company, department, account, intercompany, you see in the most of the implementations. Along with that, future one, future two, you may recommend. Some clients may agree with these two segments. Few clients may pick only one segment as a future. So along with these, what is the nature of business they are doing? They are into which business? Accordingly, they can have few more segments also. Okay. So they are into some service industry. They may have one segment called as, okay, service type or service line. Say, for example, they are doing some projects as a part of their organizational activities, and they are not going to use the PPM applications, project portfolio management applications. In that case, if any transaction they are going to record in the system, any transaction they are going to record in the system, if they want to track the project related information, they can have a segment called as project within the chart of accounts. When if they are not going to implement PPM, project portfolio management applications, if they are going to use PPM applications, yes, they can capture the transactions in the PPM related to projects. If client is not going to use the PPM application, still if they are doing some projects and if they want to capture that information is belongs to which project, we can have one segment called as project within the chart of accounts. Sometimes client may operate the business in the different locations. They may have office in one location, but some activities they may do in the different locations where they don't have office also. If they want to capture such kind of transactions also more detailed level, you may have a segment called as location. You may have segment called as location. Say client wants to find out their profitability based on the products what they are dealing. You can have a segment called as product. So this is how, depending on, okay, depending on their requirement, we have to create the segment. What is the purpose of this chart of accounts? Yes, already we discussed. To capture the description of the transaction, we use chart of accounts. To capture the description of the transaction, we use this chart of accounts. And what purpose we are capturing the description? As per reporting requirements. How they want to produce the reports. How they want to produce the reports. Based on that, they set up the chart of accounts. Okay. So what is the purpose of the chart of accounts means? You can say, as per company reporting requirements, we have to create the chart of accounts. This is the point we have to understand. Based on the company reporting requirements, we have to create the chart of accounts. If you want to produce some reports, if you want to generate the reports, first of all, data should be available. How you want to prepare the reports? Accordingly, you have to maintain the segments. If you maintain the segments, you can record the transactions with the respective segment information. So you will be able to generate the report since you are storing the data as per your reporting requirements. So that is the purpose we use this chart of accounts concept. With the help of chart of accounts, we can create the segments, what base you are creating, how you want to track the data. Why you are tracking the data? Based on the data what you are tracking, you can generate the reports. So ultimately you can say, based on the company reporting requirements, we have to design the chart of accounts. We say designing. We have to design the chart of account. This is the point we have to understand. And we will talk about chart of accounts after completing few more concepts, because to understand certain points within the chart of accounts, we have to understand few different concepts also. After completing that session, once again, we'll talk about the chart of accounts. Once again, we'll talk about the chart of accounts. What are the best practices we have to follow when we design the chart of accounts, and few other points also we'll discuss more detail level. So before we proceed further, any questions here, please?
Sir, I have a question.
Yes.
For this company segment, so I think I'm a bit advanced. So this should be only the primary balancing segment, or can we have some other segment like project funds?
We'll come to know later. We'll talk about it,
Okay,
because
yeah.
it would be like you and me are going to discuss,
Okay, sure.
right? We are referring something, right? Some primary, etc. We'll see that.
Yeah.
Maybe after some time we'll come to know about it. Any other questions here, please?
So all these chart of accounts are captured when we create a transaction, or
Yes,
how is it?
correct. That's it. When we are going to record the transaction, in every transaction, you have to capture this data. Sometimes this all data may not be applicable. See, you are purchasing from supplier. When you are purchasing from supplier, which company is purchasing, you have to record. You are not going to purchase from other company within your organization. In that case, you no need to give intercompany. Intercompany means transactions happens between the company within your organization. But if when we are purchasing from supplier, so which company is purchasing from supplier, that data you have to capture. This intercompany is not required. You are recording the transaction that is not related to some services. You no need to enter the data for the segment. You are not dealing with any product. You no need to enter the data. And these two segments you are creating for future purpose. As of now, we don't use it. Whenever data is not applicable, you put some dummy value. Okay. You enter some dummy data and you complete the transaction.
So I purchase a raw material from XYZ supplier. So company will only come into picture, no? At that time.
Yes, exactly. Company will come into picture. Definitely account will come into picture, because you have to hit that amounts to so and so account, what exactly you are purchasing, which raw material. And this transaction is performed by which department. If you want to capture, you can capture the department. Rest mostly not applicable as of now, as per the case.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions here, please? Okay. No questions. Now,
Sir, one doubt.
please.
What mean by future 1 and
Your voice is very low.
what mean by future 1 and 2?
In future, if you need any new segments, additional segments, these you can replace with those segments. If you don't create that buffer space now, in future, you cannot add.
Okay.
Say, for example, after 5 years, you acquired another company.
Okay.
That company is into different business.
Okay.
So that relevant data you want to capture. Now, after 5 years, you want to capture one more segment. You want to have one more segment called as a location. Now, future one, you can convert into location.
Okay. Like this future 1 and 2, it is restricted to 1 or 2, or can be add few more as per the client requirement?
See, we don't go more than two, generally one, sometimes two. That's it. If they want to have a 3, no one will stop them. But reality, 1 or 2.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
If we don't have any future one, currently it will be future one only. But in future, if they're changing it, the name will change from future one to
Yes,
location.
yes. From future one, they need location, they need segment called as location. Future one, we will change as a location and will maintain all the locations.
Okay.
the location value set.
Okay.
And say we converted as a location, and in the later this we converted as a something like LOB, line of business. And if they need one more segment, no scope.
Okay.
Okay, no scope. They have to redesign the chart of accounts. Again, that is kind of project activity. Like as a separate project, they have to do it.
Okay.
So that's how just always we plan to have at least one or two future segments for every client. We have to explain them. We have to explain them in the future. If you are going to expand your business, or if you are going to acquire any businesses, if you are going to launch new services or products in your organization or some different vertical of businesses, then you may need additional segments. We cannot accommodate new segments in the future if you don't have any future segments within your chart of accounts. That's how we have to explain to the client. Then they will take the decision. We cannot change anything what they want. But as a consultant, our job is we have to do the consulting job. Consulting job means it's all about how to use this application, what is right, what is wrong, what is the best practice. This all we have to explain. That's what we are going to learn. So this is what we have to understand about chart of accounts. Going forward, we'll add few more points related to chart of accounts to make more sense for us. So before we proceed, any questions, please? Any questions from anyone? No. Now, we'll see how to create the chart of accounts in the system. How to create the chart of accounts in the system, we'll see. So if you want to create the chart of accounts in the system, what are the steps we have to follow? We have to perform the multiple tasks within the system to create our chart of accounts. The very first task is we have to create the value sets. How many segments you are going to create within the chart of accounts? For each segment, we have to create one value set. Okay, we have to create one value set. So we are going to create chart of accounts. To create the chart of accounts, first we have to create value sets. Already we discussed what is the purpose of value sets. Value set purpose is to maintain the segment values. For every segment, you cannot maintain the values under that. With the help of value set only, you can maintain the values. After creating the value sets, we can create chart of account structure name. Here we discussed. Within the accounting key flex field, we have to create chart of account structure name. The first task is create value sets for all the segments. Here, let's take this a simple example. Okay. So we have 8 segments. We have to create 8 value sets. After that, we create chart of account structure name. So create chart of accounts structure name. Within the chart of account structure, what we have to create? We have to create segments within the chart of account structure. Within the chart of account structure, we have to create the segments. Say, create segments. We have to create the segments. And we are creating the value sets for segments only. The value sets we have to assign to segments. Here already we discussed. Company value set to company segment, department value set to department segment. So that's how each value set we have to assign to respective segments. If you are going to have 8 segments, for 8 segments, we create 8 value sets, and each value set we have to associate to respective segment. The same point you have to take here. Assign value sets to segments. Assign value sets to segments. Okay, we have to assign value sets to segments. After assigning the value sets to segments, we have to assign something else to segments. What is that? Let's talk. For segments, we have to assign, just take the name. We will come to know, we'll discuss, and we will do in the system. Certain things you cannot understand directly. We have to wait for some time. Till the time, just make a note and at least remember that name, what we are discussing. That is expectation. You no need to understand in one go everything. Especially in the chart of accounts, we have to wait for some time to understand, to get the big picture about it. Assign segment labels. Assign segment labels to segments. We no need to find the colors of segment labels. What does it mean by segment labels and why we use and all. So just make a note. We will discuss, and it takes some time to understand. Whenever you record the transactions, you can understand few segment label. Whenever we do few further setups, you can understand what is the purpose of segment labels. As of now, just make a note. As a part of chart of accounts creation, we have to assign the segment labels to segments. That is a point we have to take. After assigning the segment labels to segments, we have to create chart of accounts instance. What is the meaning of instance? The English term meaning. Anyone, please? I'm not talking about our application and all, just the meaning of instance. The English term instance means what?
Environment.
Sorry?
Environment.
Nothing but a duplicate or an example.
Exactly, that's it. That note is enough. Duplication, or you can say copy. So to create the chart of accounts, we are doing all these setups. Once you complete all these setups, your chart of accounts should be ready. But whatever the chart of accounts we are going to create, you cannot use the chart of account directly. Okay, you cannot use the chart of accounts directly. So what we have to do is, the chart of accounts you have to copy, then you can use it. Whatever you are creating as a chart of accounts, that you cannot use as it is. When you can use, if you copy the chart of accounts, you can use it. So the same chart of accounts, what we create in the system by creating value sets, by creating chart of account structure, name, segments, assigning the value sets to segments, assigning the segment labels to segments, by performing all these tasks, will create our chart of accounts. If you want to use the chart of accounts, you have to copy. The copy of our chart of accounts we call as chart of accounts instance, or we call as chart of account structure instance. So here we are calling as chart of account structure or chart of account structure name. So you copy the chart of account structure that you call as chart of accounts instance, or you can call as chart of account structure instance. Okay, why we are calling it as structure? We already discussed. We are framing it as a structure. So we are framing it as a structure. That is the reason this we are calling as a structure. Create chart of account structure instance. We copy the chart of account structure or chart of accounts that we call as chart of account structure instance.
Lakshman, your voice is not clear. I think there is a mic issue.
No, not from my side. Same with everyone.
It's clear for us.
It was clear for us.
Yeah, you have to check from your end, please. Okay, so by completing all these setups, you can create your chart of accounts. If you want to use your chart of accounts, we cannot use as it is. That need to be copied. If you copy the chart of accounts, that we call as chart of account structure instance. Now, where we are creating the chart of accounts? Anyone, please? We discussed. Where do we create the chart of accounts?
In GL, general ledger.
In general ledger. Okay. Anything else you can say? General ledger, fine. Anything else you want to say as an answer to this question? Where do we create the chart of accounts?
Accounting section.
Yeah, that is the point we need. Yes, general ledger application only. Within the general ledger application, where? Within the accounting key flex field. Within the accounting key flex field. How many chart of accounts we can create within the accounting key flex field? N number of chart of accounts we create. But reality in the implementations, how many we create? Max one only. Even client is running the business in 100 countries, one chart of account is enough. That we call as global chart of accounts. If you are creating the chart of accounts for each country, one, those are local chart of accounts. If you are creating one chart of account to use for multiple countries, that we call as global chart of accounts. You don't find specific requirement to create separate chart of accounts for each and every country. The most of the implementation, almost all the implementations, we create single chart of accounts, and the same we use for multiple countries because there are many benefits out of it. That is the reason always we use the global chart of account. If client is running the business in only one country, you don't need to call it as global chart of account. Client is using in one country, client is running the business in one country. We just create the chart of accounts we use for only one country. That is one and only chart of accounts. Here you don't need to say local or global, just chart of accounts. If client is running the business in multiple countries, if client is going to use the chart of account in the multiple countries, that we call as global chart of account. If client is operating the business in 5 countries, for each country, they have a separate chart of account. So then you can say those are local chart of accounts. For each country separate means those are country specific, local chart of accounts you can call. In almost all the implementations, we deal with a global chart of accounts. We create the chart of accounts. So as per company reporting requirement to support all the country related transaction tracking requirements, exactly what data need to be tracked whenever you record the transactions within India or US or UK, wherever you do the business. So here what we have to understand is within the accounting key flex field, we are going to create the chart of accounts. You can create multiple chart of accounts or single chart of account. Reality, we create single. After creating the chart of account, within the accounting key flex field, the chart of account need to be validated. The chart of account need to be validated. System will validate the chart of account. What validation system will do, we will discuss. Okay, what validation system will perform, we will discuss when we do that activity in the system. When you submit for validation within the system, we will discuss so that it would be easy for us to understand. As of now, make a note what process we have to follow. So after creating the chart of account structure instance, what we have to do, we have to submit our chart of accounts for validation. Where are we creating our chart of accounts? Within the accounting key flex field. The accounting key flex field, you can call as it is as accounting key flex field, or else simply you can call as accounting flex field also. Okay. You may not include key. You can call as accounting key flex field, or simply you can say accounting flex field. Both are same. Sometimes they give the name as accounting key flex fill in few pages. In few pages, they may give as a accounting flex fill. You may see with the different names, but you have to understand both are same. When you say accounting flex fill, nothing but accounting key flex fill only. We can use this to maintain the company key information, important information, which is a mandatory, which is required for reporting purpose. Now here you can take the point as since we are going to create the chart of accounts within the accounting key flex field, we are going to submit accounting key flex field for validation. Submitting for validation here simply we call as deployment in the technical term. So we call as a deployment. We submit our chart of accounts for deployment. Means we submit our chart of accounts for validation. Where we are creating the chart of accounts in the accounting key flex field or you can say accounting flex field. Now you can take the point as we have to deploy accounting flex field. We are going to submit accounting flex field for a deployment, means we are submitting accounting flex field for validation. Inside of the accounting flex field, whatever the chart of accounts are there, all will be submitted for validation. You cannot validate or you cannot deploy specific chart of accounts. You have to submit entire accounting flex field for a deployment so that all will be validated which are there inside of the accounting flex field. So this is a point you have to understand. And once that is done, you can create segment values in the respective value sets. Within the company value set, you can list out all your companies. Within the department value set, you can list out all the department. That's how in every segment related value set, you can assign, you can add relevant segment values. In the account segment, you can list out accounts. In the product segment, you can list out all the products. In the service line segment related value set, you can list out all the services which you are dealing. So that's how you can create segment values by using the value sets. So create segment values in value sets. Create segment values in the value sets. After creating the segment values in value sets, we have to assign value attributes to those segment values. Here you take example of company. So these are the companies we discussed. In the system, when you create these three companies, we have to set something to this company. When you create these departments, we have to set something to these departments. In the same way, accounts. What is that something? What we have to set? That we call as value attributes. Say we have to assign value attributes to segment values. We have to assign value attributes to segment values. We have to assign value attributes to segment value. Just make a note, just memorize. When we do in the system, we can understand. Okay. So what we are going to do, what are the sequence of activities we have to perform to complete our chart of accounts creation, we are discussing. Instead of directly jumping into the instance and doing all these, which will create some confusion, I want to give you the complete information, what exactly we are going to do in the system. Certain points directly you can understand what does it mean. What when we discuss we have to perform so and so setup, you can understand directly. Certain steps you cannot understand, we have to wait and see. After that, yes, you can understand. And few points or few setups, what we are discussing or what we are going to do in the system, even if I complete, you may not get clarity. Only the solution is you have to do the same from your end in the system instance, then you will feel comfortable. These are all applicable only for this chart of accounts. The rest of all concepts, what we are going to deal, those are not this much complex. Even you don't find this as a complex, it's a simple, and rest are very, very simple. So these are the tasks we have to perform to complete our chart of accounts within the instance. To complete our chart of accounts within the instance. Any questions here, please?
Lakshman, as you said, one chart of accounts, it can be used for globally, correct? No?
Yes, you can use for multiple countries.
Okay. So under the company, whatever the global companies that we can map it.
Correct. All companies you can list out within the company value set.
Okay. Okay. Done. Thanks.
Any other questions?
So one
Yep.
question.
Please.
So for this local chart of account and global, just in case if client is opting for local chart of account and global for rest of the
One
companies,
second.
how do we
1 second. When client is going to use local, mostly there won't be any global.
for only one company?
No. One company not. There may be multiple companies, country. If you are going to use one chart of account for multiple countries, then call it as global because you are using in the multiple countries. I'm not talking about number of companies. I'm talking about number of countries. See, client may have only one company. In India, one company, US, one company, and UAE in one company. 3 companies. But the chart of accounts, they are going to use in how many countries? Based on that, you can say that is a global. If they are using in only one country, then call it as local. When you are calling as local, mostly there won't be any global.
But the setup is same only, right?
Setup is same. Setup.
That's that we call it as
Usage
local
is
and global.
different. Usage, you may use for one country or multiple countries. It will remain as it is. By looking at chart of accounts, you cannot understand whether global or local. The way how we create as it is. How you are planning, based on that, you can call as global or local. That's it. In terms of chart of accounts creation, there is no difference as it is. Okay.
Got it.
Yeah. Any other questions, please?
So what is this difference between deployment and create account structure instance?
Okay. In the last session, we discussed. So here is the title, right? For this total information is belongs to which organization. For that, we have a title, right? You can respond.
Yeah.
We have a title, right? What title we given? Amex Corporation. When you create the same in the system, that only we call as chart of accounts structure name. Okay, this total data is belongs to which organization? That name we give as a chart of account structure name. That's it. This is just title, placeholder. This is validation. This is the name. This is the validation for this total data, what we are entering in the system. Got it?
Yeah. Why do we need an instance here?
Okay. Here we are creating the chart of accounts. We cannot use the chart of accounts as it is what Oracle is providing, what we are creating. Oracle is not allowing us to use chart of accounts as it is. We have to make a copy. Okay. I thought of explaining why we have to create instance when we create. Since you're asking the question, I'll just give you note and again I'll explain. whenever we create instance. So there is a concept called as Hyperion. Okay, we use Hyperion for planning, budgeting purposes. In the Hyperion, you cannot use our chart of accounts as it is. So as per Hyperion, we need instance. That is the reason, since Oracle is included Hyperion product functionalities within the Fusion, we are going to use that Hyperion capabilities in Fusion for the data which is going to be stored in this chart of accounts. They introduce the concept called as instance. Reality, we don't need an instance. There are no great benefits with a chart of account structure instance. But in Fusion, they made it as a mandatory, since we are going to use the different products. One of the product is, along with our Oracle, Hyperion product. For reporting, budgeting, and for other purposes, we can use that product. Their instance is required. That is the reason in the process itself, they included that step. You have to create instance so that wherever the instance is required, that can be used. And they are making instance as a primary, not structure. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. To support other applications usage, instance we are creating. If we are going to use only Oracle related financial applications, which are built by Oracle, you don't need instance. Are you from EBS background?
No.
No. Okay. If you are from EBS background, the note is we don't have any instance concept in the EBS. EBS also we create chart of accounts. Before Fusion, we have EBS, e-business suite. In EBS, we create these. We don't create instance. Okay, we create all these. We complete all these setups. Same setups we'll do, but we don't do this. We don't create it. Whatever we create, we can use, because in EBS, as a part of standard product, there is no Hyperion applications. In Fusion, they added. If you want to leverage that Hyperion product functionalities, so you need instance for your chart of accounts. Hope it makes sense. So any other questions, let me know. Any questions from anyone, please?
So we have Oracle AR and AP, no? And
Correct.
the one that you're talking, we are creating in Oracle GL. So we create transactions in accounts payable and accounts receivable. So do we have chartered accounts in AR and AP?
This is the one we use in all the applications. The place is GL. The definition we create within the GL application, we use this in all the applications. Okay. We are creating within the GL application, but we are going to use this to record the transactions in all the applications. You don't need to create separate chart of accounts for each and every application. Because within the financials, GL is the foundation application for all the applications. Without GL, you cannot use any application, because without chart of accounts, you cannot capture the description in any application. So we create chart of accounts within the GL application, and we use this chart of account across all the applications. Any other questions, please? No questions. Now, so create value sets. Already we discussed. Anyway, we'll see in the system. This is how for each segment we have to create the value set so that we can list out the relevant values. As a part of this process, after creating value sets, you should not plan to create the values in those value sets. Okay, so you will create company value set. You should not list out all the companies in the company value set. The same way you will create account value set, you should not create account values in the account value set. Why? you have to deploy the accounting flex field, then you have to create the values within the value set. If you don't deploy, just you create a value set and you are trying to create the values and you cannot assign value attributes to segment values. You created a value set. Immediately you are creating these companies. Something you have to set to these values that we call as value attributes. You cannot set. System will allow you to set the value attributes, any segment related values, once the chart of account is deployed. Once deployment is complete, then only system will allow you to set value attributes, otherwise no. So this is what we have to understand. So we should not create the values in the value sets before chart of accounts deployment. Before chart of accounts deployment, you should not create values in the value set. If you create, system will allow. That is a partial definition only, it will allow. It's not a complete. With the incomplete values in the value sets, no use. You cannot do anything with those. So that is the point you have to understand. So when you talk about create value sets, yes, we create value sets, but we don't create values immediately. Then we have to create our chart of account structure name that we are calling as chart of account structure name. Okay, whatever the chart of accounts we are creating, that structure name we have to give. So within that chart of accounts, how many segments we required, we have to create. That point we discussed. Within the chart of accounts, max you can create 30 segments, minimum 2 segments. Okay, minimum 2 segments, max 30 segments. So reality, how many segments we create, we discuss. In some implementation 6, few implementation 7, in another implementation maybe 8, 9, 10. So more than 10 generally you don't see. If somewhere somebody is using 11 or 12, that we don't treat as a best practice. Because we should try to minimize the number of segments in the chart of accounts. The reason is really those are not required. Why? Every application has its own capability of tracking the data. Take example of payables. When we are recording the transaction within the payables, the transaction belongs to which company, which department, and which account related balances, whatever the transaction you are recording invoice. So the invoice related balances are belongs to which expense, etc. You have to capture. That information is primary. And along with that, you can capture who is the supplier. But supplier we require in the payables application. If required, we use supplier in the purchasing also. In purchasing and payables, the two application has a capability of tracking the supplier's information in every transaction. So within the payables, if there is no option of creating and maintaining the suppliers, you can create the segment called as supplier in your chart of accounts, but not required. Payables, you can create and maintain the supplier. Whenever you create the transaction, the payables, you can select the supplier and you can create. So the relevant information you can select from the chart of accounts. So in the same way, receivables. When you record the transaction, the receivables, we need customer. We need customer that you should not create as one of the segment in the chart of accounts. So customers you can maintain in the receivables and you can record the transactions along with this chart of accounts data. In the same way, in the fixed assets, if you are going to create the assets, you should not have any segment in the chart of accounts as a asset. Directly you can create assets in the fixed assets. If there is no option to create the fixed assets in the fixed assets, you may create one segment called as fixed assets in the or asset in the chart of accounts and you can create. So this is very, very important point to understand. So whatever we create in the chart of accounts as segments, those segments should be useful in the most of the application. You take example of company. Company we use in all the applications when you record the transaction. Since you are using company, the transaction is belongs to in that company for which department you have to capture. That is the reason we are using the department. The same way account. In every application, whenever you record the transaction, you have to target specific account when you record the amounts. In the same way, intercompany. In any application, if that is related to business transaction within the organization, not with the suppliers and customer. So between which branches or between which companies you are, or between which entities you are recording the transaction within the organization to track, we need intercompany. In the same way, service line or product or project, etc., whatever the data you want to capture, it may be related to multiple application transaction that you have to take as a segment in the chart of account. If any data is limited to one application or two applications, it is not at all recommended to take as a one of the segment in the chart of accounts. You may take sometimes as exceptional. Take example as a product. All the products we maintain within the inventory. Why to take in the chart of accounts as a segment? Yes, we maintain all the products within the inventory. Whenever you perform the inventory related transaction, you can select specific product or specific item and you can do the purchase activity or sales activity. But why that is required within the chart of accounts? You want to find out the profitability product wise. For which product, how much profitability you are getting, you want to find out. So that is the reason you may take product as a one of the segment in the chart of accounts. Until unless you have some specific business requirement, you should not select or you should not take that information as a one of the segment in the chart of account. This is what we have to understand when you create the chart of accounts. Not only this, there are few more other points which we call as best practices when we design the chart of account. That we will discuss very soon. As of now, just make a note of these points. So along with this, let's talk about a few other points. So we discussed about value sets. Yes, we have to create value set for each segment, and we should not create any values within the value sets. The moment we create value sets, we have to wait till deployment. After completing the deployment only, we have to create the values in the value sets, and so that we can assign the value attributes. If you try to create values in the value sets immediately, you cannot assign any value attributes. If you don't assign any value attributes, there is no use of those values. That is a point we discussed. And we provide the chart of account structure in structure name. Within that, we create all the segments, whatever the segments are required. How many segments means here we discussed. So max 30 you can create, minimum 2 are required. If you want to create chart of accounts, minimum 2 segments are mandatory. Those are company and account. The real implementations, this is the point you can make a note how many we create. And we assign value sets to segments. Yes, for each segment we are going to create value sets. When you create the segments, we assign the relevant value sets to segments and assign segment labels to segment. Okay, what is the meaning of segment labels? We'll come to know. For now, we'll see which segment labels we assign to which segment. Okay, which segment labels we assign to which segment, we'll see that. Just make a note, don't try to understand, because we are not discussing to understand. We will come to know and we'll discuss about it. As of now, just make a note and read and memorize it. That's it. For company segment, we have to assign one segment label called as primary balancing segment label. Please make a note of each and every point. It's very, very important. Whatever we are discussing, everything I may not write in this spreadsheet, but we will discuss. Whatever I am explaining, whatever we are discussing, what I am writing in the spreadsheet, please make a note so that this will be very much useful for your preparation. When you prepare for interview or when you prepare just as a learning or when you practice in the system, this information is very, very important. Yes, you will get the videos for each and every session and you can download those videos also. But remember, don't depend on those videos. It is not easy for you always to play all the videos to go through once again. If really you have that much time, you may play and go through, but all the time it is not at all possible. For your quick reference, Please make a note of each and every point. Please write the running note. That is very, very important when you practice, when you prepare, when you just go through, when you have interview also for quick reference, whatever the note you are going to prepare now, that is very, very important. And please don't plan in this way. Now I will write a draft note. Later I will write the final note. No, not required. That much you are not going to submit any report anywhere. So just write it as a like whatever possible during the class itself. And again, don't make a plan of playing the video and preparing the note, not required. So very simple. When we are running the session, capture whatever the maximum you can capture. And another very important point is whenever we are running the class, whatever we are going to discuss, please make a note. When we are practicing on the instance, if I'm going to show you how to create accounting calendar, where you can find the currency information, how to create the chart of accounts. When we do these activities in the system, same time you don't start practicing from your end. You lose the opportunity of thinking and understanding and asking the questions. Okay. Don't practice parallelly. If I'm going to create the chart of accounts from your end, don't start practicing. That doesn't make any sense. You may create chart of accounts, you will lose many points in terms of understanding. Okay. After class only practice. When we are running the session, capture everything into your note. That is okay. But that is the minimum thing we have to do, that we cannot stop. That is the reason. Capture everything into your note and try to understand what we are discussing, but don't start practicing during the class itself. And don't leave any point, everything you capture. It could be theoretical related or concept, sequence of steps, everything and anything what we are going to discuss in the class. You please make a note. That will really will help you. That only will help you, not the videos. Videos will be there with you in EverPlay, most of the people. Only the note what you are preparing, that will help you. Okay, this is the point. So when we talk about assigning the segment labels to segments, for company segment, we have to assign primary balance and segment label. Just make a note. We'll come to know why we have to assign primary balance and segment label, what is there inside of the primary balance and segment label, why we have to assign primary balance and segment label only to company. We will come to know all this. I'm trying to introduce those names. That's it. For a department segment, which label we have to assign? For a department segment, we have to assign cost center segment label. Please make a note everything. Cost center segment labels. Okay, we have to assign cost center segment labels. And what about account segment? Okay, for every segment, you don't need to assign the labels. Why also will understand. For company, we have to assign the primary balance and segment label. Okay, simply you can say label only, not labels. Primary balance and segment label, and department cost center segment label. Account segment, what label you have to assign? For account segment, you have to assign natural account segment label. For account segment, you have to assign natural account segment label. For intercompany, what label you have to assign? You have to assign intercompany segment label. Okay, intercompany segment label. So these are the different labels we have to assign. When you create chart of accounts, these are the different labels we have to assign to the relevant segments. What we are calling these as a segment labels. We are calling as segment labels. Just make a note of these segment labels, which label we are assigning to which segment also. Please remember. So primary balance and segment label, cost center segment label, natural account segment label, intercompany segment label. The intercompany segment label we have to assign to intercompany segment, primary balance and segment label to company segment, natural account segment label to account segment, cost center segment label to department segment. This is how different labels we have to assign to different segments. Why? We don't know as of now. We will come to know. We'll discuss. I can explain, but this is not the right time. It is unnecessary information. It will create confusion because I can explain this is the purpose we use, but that you don't see as a proof and you cannot understand also. Whenever you can understand and whenever these will impact in the system, I will explain so that easily you can understand. Okay, going forward, we will see. See, we assign primary balance and segment label to company. That is the reason. This is what we can see. This is how system is behaving. That's how we will discuss so that it will make more sense for us. It would be easy for us to understand. Till the time, just what we are doing, make a note and remember. That's it. So these are the different labels we have to assign to these segments. Out of these labels, which labels are mandatory? When you create the chart of accounts, do we need to assign all these labels to these segments? No. All are not mandatory. Which labels are mandatory? Okay, which labels are mandatory? The primary balance and segment label is mandatory. You should assign the primary balance and segment label. The same way, natural account segment label is mandatory. Within the chart of accounts, two labels are mandatory: primary balance and segment label and natural account segment label. These two labels are mandatory. If you create the chart of accounts without using these two labels, when you submit accounting flex field for a deployment, it will throw error message and it will give you the message also. In your chart of accounts or else in so-and-so chart of accounts, primary balance and segment label is missing. If not primary balance and segment label, natural account segment label is missing. The deployment means we are submitting for validation. The validation process can identify the mistakes, what we are doing as a part of chart of accounts. The possible mistake could be the segment label assignment. If you don't assign primary balance and segment label and natural account segment label to respective segments, system will identify that as a mistake and it will throw error message and you have to correct. And again, you have to submit for a deployment. So this is very, very important point. We have to understand what is the purpose of this natural account segment label, primary balance and segment label. We'll discuss very, very clearly. And so create segment values and assign value attributes. What are the value attributes? So as a part of value attributes, very primary value attributes I'm going to talk about. We set attributes like allow budgeting, allow posting. The same way, as a part of value attributes, we deal with the account types. So within the system, what are the accounts we create? Those accounts are classified into 5 types. Just make a note. If you are not aware of it, no worries. We will come to know. Just make a note and memorize. So we have a 5 type of accounts. Just make a note. Expense, revenue, assets, liabilities, ownership or owner's equity, you can say. So these are the 5 type of accounts. Okay. Expense, revenue, assets, liabilities, ownership. These are the 5 type of accounts. Just make a note. Okay, just make a note. This all comes under value attributes. Okay, this all comes under value attributes. So these are segment labels. These are value attributes. Allow budgeting, allow posting. We will come to know. As of now, take the names. Take the names so that when you are dealing with those would be known for us. We'll have some familiarity. When we discuss further, easily you can connect. If I'm going to show you all these in the system directly, if I'm going to explain what is a purpose, etc., we may not connect for everything. So that is the reason just I'm trying to introduce, we are going to deal with what, so that our job will become easy. You should remember all this. In the tomorrow session, if I ask you, what are the segment labels we have, you should be able to explain at least what we discussed. If I ask you the question, what are the different type of accounts we have, you should be able to answer. If I ask you the question, what segment labels need to be assigned to which segments, you should be able to answer. That is the expectation from this class. Whatever you are completing, you should be able to speak out. That's very, very important. If you are doing something in the system, by next session, you should be comfortable doing the same setups in the system. That's how you have to target your practice or preparation. That will help you. Just attending the classes, planning to come do the practice in the weekend after a few days or after completing course doesn't support, doesn't work, no use. If you are able to complete what I am able to complete today, that's great. Okay, whatever I'm completing today, if you are able to complete before tomorrow's session, that is really great. So that will work. Okay, these are the points we have to understand. Okay, in today's session, we discussed about how many segments you can create, max 30. Minimum 2 segments are required. Those are company and account. Reality, these many segments we create in the chart of accounts. To create the chart of accounts, these are the multiple tasks we have to perform. We have to follow the same sequence. It is not like just list. Same sequence we have to follow. Okay, you cannot change the sequence. The same sequence we have to follow. And for segments, we have to assign the segment labels. These are the labels we assign to these segments. We'll understand the purpose of each and every segment label. So we have time to know about all those things. As of now, just make a note. And out of these segment labels, these 2 labels are mandatory. Those 2 mandatory labels we are assigned to which segments, you can notice. And as a part of chart of accounts, we have to assign value attributes to segment values. The value attributes are allow budgeting, allow posting. And we have account types also as a part of value attributes. These are the 5 type of accounts we have. Along with these, we have few more value attributes, but you no need to discuss now. We will see in the system. We have a summary, financial category, reconcile, and third-party control account. Few we have. Now you don't need to get into that. Again, that will create the confusion for us. These points you can take. These are enough to understand now. Once we jump into the instance, when you are creating the chart of accounts, we will come across all those. Easily you can understand since we know by this time these details. So this is what you have to understand about chart of accounts. So any questions on today's session, please? Whatever we discussed, we didn't do anything, just we are trying to understand. It's very, very important. Directly jumping into instance and doing something, it's not a great job. Understanding is important here. You should be able to understand what is what, why, how. Then doing in the system is straightforward. Anyone can do it. That is not a big deal. So understanding the things is very, very important. Whatever you are discussing and understanding, that we should be able to speak. You should be able to present to others. That's very, very important. Any questions here, please? Any questions from anyone? So we will plan to complete chart of accounts creation in the tomorrow session. Okay, in tomorrow session, we will complete the chart of accounts so that our calendar would be ready, currency would be ready, chart of accounts would be ready, so that by using these three components, what we can do, we will discuss in the next session. First, we'll complete chart of accounts creation in the system in the tomorrow session. Then we will proceed how to go about it. Don't think we completed chart of account related understanding. There are few more points as a chart of accounts best practices. When we discuss about that, I will just add few details related to chart of accounts, which we have to understand. Okay. So because I can discuss now, but you cannot understand the reason. There is some dependency. If you understand few other topics, the chart of account concept is aligned with those concept understanding. Once we are clear about the other topics, what we are going to discuss in coming 2 to 3 classes, then once again we'll come back to this chart of accounts. I will add those few additional points. Then it would be like understanding about chart of accounts is complete. Any questions from anyone, please? If no questions, we can wind up for today. We'll connect tomorrow same time. Any questions from anyone, please?
Sir, I have questions related to the previous classes.
Yes.
So in the offering screens, we have financial offerings, right? Like supply chain order management. What is this customer data management? Is it not part of finance?
Not finance. That is related to CRM. CRM, CX application.
Oh, this is not customer master data. This is
No,
something
not
different.
customer. Not customer master is just one entity which we use in the sales, order management, and receivables. So we have a different offerings like CRM and CX, customer experience offerings. It is not related to our finance. We deal with the customer, okay, but it is not as a separate offering. That's different. The CRM and the CX related, that is. CX means customer experience.
Okay. So one more question. So in the implementation project, where we are creating an implementation project in managed implementation project task. So if we assign some tasks to users, right? So will that specific users get notification on their screen that so and so person has assigned so and so task to you, something like that?
They don't get any notification. See, when you are part of implementation project, you know very well what is your responsibility.
Yeah.
Right? You may work for only payables or payables and receivables or only for GL or else all the application, depends. So no need to assign anything on your name. You no need to get any notification. It is not business process, right? If it is a day-to-day business process, if somebody is going to assign something to you, you should get notified so that you can take some action. Take example, you are creating invoice in the payables. If somebody is creating invoice, if you are manager to them or authorized person, you should get the notification to approve it. Who is going to assign the task to you here when you are working as consultant? No one. You are going to create the implementation project. You are going to do the setups. Nobody is going to assign anything to you. You are going to act as a consultant. But Oracle given that option, saying that up to this level, the assignments and tracking is possible. But in no implementation project, we do that.
Oh, got it.
Yeah.
Then one more thing on the implementation project status and the drop down, I've noticed something called execution frozen. What is this exactly?
Means you are giving the note message to somebody, implementation is completed and we freezed everything. We don't recommend anyone to go back and do some setups. That is the status you are giving message. Sometimes you may set as error also.
Yeah.
So you are communicating through system. If somebody is looking at that, they can understand, okay, something went wrong within the setups, etc. That's it. It's all about just status and giving message to the people who are going to look at that project. That's all. But nothing has a control. Even if you set the status as a completed, it will display, but anyone can go and do the setups. Okay, if you set the implementation project end date is this month 15th, after 15th also you can go and do the setups. It's all just for information. In reality, we don't set status, we don't do the resource assignment. Just we discuss to understand how it is. That's it.
Got it, sir. So one last question. When human capital management, that offering is not in scope for one of the project. As a finance implementation consultant, so we'll be creating employee usernames, right, for them.
We
Is it like is it mandatory to assign employee role or like
employees
anyway we'll be
mandatory.
creating?
See, who are going to work on the payables, receivables, who are those employees?
But for what purpose? Anyway, they don't have HCM system, right? How they claim, how they record claim expenses and all.
How you track who is doing that activities and how you can route the approvals. That is the reason you have to create.
Okay.
Okay. You have to create. In the say, for example, if you don't create the user as employee, you cannot manage all type of approvals. If you don't create the user who is using the system as employee, they cannot claim their expenses, expense reports.
Yeah, but they don't have HCM module, right? How can they?
See,
Okay, expense module.
one second,
Okay,
one
fine.
second. If they don't have, they don't have. What's wrong with that? What we are trying to understand is if you want to use the system, they should be available in the system as employee. That is the reason we are creating. See, we create the person, employee as employee in the system, and they'll be accessing payables. Who is going to work on payables? Who are those? Employees, right?
Yeah.
That is the reason we are creating. There is nothing to think on that. You may not run the payrolls in our system. The employee information will be in other system. They will run the payrolls of employees in other systems since they are not using HCM. So we'll be
Okay,
working on
got it.
payables, receivables, purchasing, and other application. All our employees, you are creating employees. That's it. There's no other point on that. Just simple. 100 employees are working on the system. Create 100 employees. If they are using HCM, create employees in HCM as a full-fledged record and use here. Since they are not using HCM, create as a basic employee definition. We will see in our classes.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Any other
Lakshman,
questions? Yeah, please.
Lakshman, I have apart from this question.
Yeah.
See, I have sent couple of emails regarding this practical while doing the project. I was facing some errors that I sent you mail if possible. Just you check and revert.
Tell me what is the issue. We can discuss.
Yeah, 1 minute.
So when we connect in the end of the session, we can spend time. Okay.
Okay.
Any sort of discussion, if you have issue with instance, practice related or errors, anything you need more clarity.
Yeah. See, I'm getting while creating these segments, I'm getting an error while saving it. You cannot use the following string or character as it conflicts with strings or characters reserved for S-base.
Yeah. The
Member
name
names.
what you are using, that is a Oracle reserved term for S-base. What is the name you are giving?
I'm giving whatever the names have given in the class, that same department account, the same only I have given.
No. For segments, read out your segments.
My segment name is department account intercompany project future 1 future 2 company, and segment code same like department account intercompany project future 1 future 2 company.
Should not make any issue. No, something should be there like
And the another one, this all the names have accepted, but in the accounting key flexi field instance, this name actually the segment structure name, it is not visible.
Structure is not visible.
Yeah, structure name is not visible.
That means you didn't create structure. If structure is properly created and saved, it should come.
I have done. Anyway, I will recheck again.
Please
The
check
name.
it, because see, whatever the segments we use, if those are reserved by Oracle or Hyperion product, SBS means Hyperion. That's what we discussed earlier, like the chart of account structure instance is required in the SBS we discussed, Hyperion product. SBS means that is a database for Hyperion.
Okay.
That is the meaning of it. So it is, see, whatever we are using, those are not reserved words, reserved strings. In that, you please check the name what you given. What is the name you given for your chart of account structure and instance? Tell me.
I have given see, it's like Aryan Trading Company.
RN.
ARIHANT, Aryan Trading Company.
Maybe you change that name and try. We are not
Yeah,
sure.
sure.
Somewhere for
Yep.
some metadata, so and so they might have used something. For example, I'll give you a simple example. If you try to create something in the system as a chart of account name as a MEX max, it doesn't allow. It says it is a reserved word, Oracle reserved word.
Okay.
Certain words are reserved by Oracle, those they don't allow to use users.
Okay. How do we know that these
We
are
don't know. You may search in the Google, if they are giving the list, we'll come to know. But see, many names doesn't conflict, somewhere somehow it will conflict.
okay?
Okay, if something goes wrong like this, it will get a message. Right now you got message saying that it's a S-base reserved word. Right?
Yeah,
That's how we come to know.
okay.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I will
Try, change the
recreate
name,
again.
change
Yeah,
the
yeah.
name and try again. Let's see.
Sure. Thanks. Lash.
Still, if you are facing the issue in the tomorrow session, we'll go through that instance.
Sure.
Class
Thank you.
itself. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks. Any other questions from anyone, please? Great. No questions. So that's all for today. We'll connect tomorrow, same time, and we'll see how to create the chart of accounts within the instance. Yeah. Thank you all.